Israel had warned civilians to leave the area in Rafah yesterday, but gave them little time to do it. Our crew filmed how the bombing started just hours after Israel's evacuation notice. Palestinian medics say more than 20 people were killed in the overnight operation, including children. The bodies today handed over to their families.
Just another day in Gaza, and now Israel has taken full control of the Palestinian side of the Rafah border, thus having complete control over the Gaza Strip, including the border that it previously did not have full control over. And this honestly was likely Israel's plan all along, given the fact that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had made clear earlier that he wanted Israel to have full control of what is referred to as the Philadelphia corridor. I'll give you more details on that in just a moment. But first, more details on the military operations that were carried out and the fallout from Egypt. So Israel, after they had invaded Rafah, erected 2 of their flags on the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing. Another video also showed an armored vehicle ramming into a Gaza sign flanked by 2 Palestinian flags by the arrivals hall. Now the IDF claims that didn't do anything wrong. It was just carrying out a very specific targeted operation that allegedly killed 20 Hamas militants and discovered 3 tunnel shafts. But also keep in mind that the IDF considers all military-aged men to be militants, so it's likely that they killed civilians and identified them as militants. We really have no confirmation, and I would not take the IDF's word for it. Now, the tensions are growing between Israel and Egypt. Egypt has warned Israel that military action on the border, meaning the Rafah border, could violate a 4-decade-old peace treaty between the 2 countries, which would, of course, further escalate the tensions and war in that region of the world. It would be a disaster. In a statement, the Egyptian Foreign Ministry said the following: Egypt vehemently denounces the Israeli military operation in Palestine, Rafah, which has resulted in Israel controlling the Palestinian side of the border. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry described the incursion as a dangerous escalation that was threatening ceasefire efforts, adding that the operation endangered the lives of the million Palestinians who depend on the crossing for humanitarian aid and a safe way out for the injured and patients to get treatment. Now, very few people have been able to leave the Gaza Strip for medical treatment in Egypt, but that has happened throughout this war. And obviously the Rafah border crossing has been critical in allowing for aid to come into the Gaza Strip. And now with Israel taking full control of that area, experts are saying that humanitarian aid has completely stopped entering the Strip. And it was already barely trickling in to begin with. So there's a lot more to get to, Cenk. What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, so first of all, Egypt is livid on 2 fronts. One is that this is a violation of their sovereignty because the other side is controlled by Egypt. And so Israel just came in and knocked all that down, planted their own flags. That's why they're saying this is technically a violation of their peace deal from all the way from the Camp David Accords. And so Israel just shreds other countries' sovereignty without a second thought. I mean, they bomb Syria all day, every day. Lebanon, they bomb, no hesitation at all. The fact that they're sovereign countries, obviously they bombed the Iranian consulate, which almost started a giant World War III, and now they're doing it to Egypt because they don't care about international law. They don't think they're subject to international. They literally think they're above the law. And so, yeah, but you have a peace deal with Egypt that has been fantastically successful for the last 40 years. And now Netanyahu, the warmonger, is threatening to destroy that. The second reason why Egypt is concerned is because they say that the Israeli cabinet had already approved the ceasefire deal that they sent to Hamas. And once Hamas said yes, the Egyptians say, then Israel turned around and said, no, we're backing out of the ceasefire deal. And Egypt's point is, what did you make us go through this whole thing for and pretend that you were in favor of the ceasefire deal, only to have Hamas say yes, and then you turn around and betray everyone that was part of the peace deal, including Egypt, Qatar, and the United States of America. So That's their perspective. And lastly, for now, on the Rafah crossing, guys, there's a second giant problem. Anna pointed out the humanitarian aid is now blocked. Already there was very little access to humanitarian aid and already 1 million starving Palestinians. The second problem is, if Israel controls that border crossing, they could open the border, start bombing near the border to drive the Palestinians into the Sinai Desert in Egypt.
They wouldn't want to do that, right? It's not like they've stated that they want to do that, but we're not supposed to believe what Israeli government officials say. We're just supposed to pretend like they're not saying the things that they're saying out loud.
Yeah,
correct?
We're only supposed to believe the parts where they claim to be super moral and that golly gee, there was nothing they could do, etc. But when their cabinet ministers actually say, we want to drive them into the Sinai and we want to take Gaza for ourselves, you're not allowed to say things that they've actually said.
Yeah, this is the thing that's been so incredibly frustrating about this ongoing war and the reaction you get from hardline Israel supporters when you simply state the facts of what's happening and simply repeat the quotes uttered by government officials within Israel, right? You just state the facts and they want to pretend like that's not the reality. Right, like, okay, so am I supposed to pretend like Itamar Ben-Gvir didn't say that he just wants to kill Palestinian prisoners with no due, he wants to execute them with no due process because the prisons are overcrowded. I'm supposed to pretend like that doesn't exist. They've been saying that they want to push Palestinians into the Sinai almost since the beginning of this war, but I'm supposed to pretend like they didn't say that. Every military action they've taken from the very beginning has driven to the main goal, the main objectives that they've made clear from the very beginning, but we're supposed to pretend like it's not happening. I just don't understand. So I get that people are afraid to criticize Israel. I totally get that, okay? There has been a reign of terror on student protesters who are doing nothing wrong. They're getting inflated by a handful of people who say inflammatory things. And I think that's very much on purpose. It's meant to shut anyone up if they even dare consider any critique or criticism of Israel's government. And look, that effort to silence people isn't gonna work, but the gaslighting, you're right, Cenk, you make this point all the time, is starting to really drive me crazy. Because it's not like I'm making up the quotes they're saying. It's not like I'm making up what they claim their military operations are gonna be.
Yeah, so Ben-Gvir said that he wants to encourage the migration of Gazans out of Gaza. And Netanyahu has said, well, it could be done voluntarily, like if you open the gate and then start bombing the people next to the gate. Well, yeah, they would voluntarily flee for their lives and they drive them into the desert. And even Haaretz has called out Smotrich for basically calling for a Holocaust of Palestinians, saying that the civilian population should be totally annihilated. It doesn't get any more vicious than that. And that's not some rando next to a college chanting some random thing, not connected to anything else. That's a sitting cabinet minister inside Israel. So we had a ceasefire deal that Israel crafted according to the Egyptians, and the Americans are winking and nodding that the Egyptians are right and saying, you gotta take the deal, Israel. That is very clear, right? And now Israel's saying, haha, just kidding. We said we wouldn't bomb southern Gaza, then we bombed southern Gaza. Then Khan Yunis, now Rafah, 50 bombs already dropped, border crossing seized. And now we're gonna find out, they haven't done it yet, but we're gonna find out if they're gonna do a full-blown siege and annihilate Rafah. And if they do, no one on earth can claim that it wasn't ethnic cleansing and genocide.
They will.
They will, and they'll do their usual maniacal things. But then it becomes even more obvious that they don't care about reality at all and that they're not accidentally lying. They're lying on purpose. I don't mean the Israeli government. The fact that they're lying on purpose is super obvious. I mean Israeli supporters who still think, oh, Israel accidentally killed 24,000 women and children, which is honestly just deranged. It's totally removed from objective reality. How do you accidentally kill 24,000 women and children?
It's Hamas's fault.
Everything is always Hamas's fault. We got it. Beloved, pure moral Israel would never do anything wrong. I mean, they dropped the bombs that exploded the baby's head, but it must have been someone else's fault.
So, it did Haaretz lie in their reporting when they claimed that Israel would establish kill zones in the Gaza Strip, and any person who entered the kill zone, which of course they weren't informed about, they don't know that the kill zone exists. Anyone who enters that kill zone, killed immediately by the IDF. Did Haaretz lie in their reporting about that?
And as we're going to talk about later in this show, now we've discovered mass graves, including summary executions and torture. I'm sure those are all accidental too. But look, if you're super biased, and I've lived this and I've said this 200 times now, I grew up Turkish and I know what bias looks like. So good people, like really good, moral, decent people, can delude themselves into believing almost anything, no matter how outrageous it is, as long as it backs their own ethnic group or religious group.
Their identity. And look,
right.
let me say this, because I totally understand people who are supporters of Israel and feel that like the campus protests and the criticism that you hear toward Israel on this show is offensive to them because they feel that their personal identity is under attack. No, this isn't about your personal identity. This isn't about anyone's personal identity. This is about a foreign country's government and how they are carrying out a war that has slaughtered far more innocent civilians compared to actual Hamas militants that they claim to want to go after. And what's also shocking to me is how what the media always misses in this conversation is that the prime minister himself funded and propped up Hamas. So he empowered the very monster that he's now using as justification for the slaughter of all these innocent people in Gaza.
And the Israeli press has reported that Netanyahu and his government knew that October 7th was coming, and they didn't do anything about it. So to say that their paramount interest is protecting Israeli civilians rather than collective punishment against the Palestinians and just destroying Gaza. 70% of the buildings are destroyed in Gaza, 70% of the housing, I should be clear, and 90% of the people are displaced. That was all an accident. 90% of the civilians are collateral damage. No, 90% of the civilians is collective punishment. When they've all been displaced, they've all been driven out, they're all homeless, well, 1 million of them are starving, you got 34,500 dead, and you got another 8,000 that are missing or buried in the rubble, over 42,000 slaughtered, the overwhelming majority of them women and children. And people still want to pretend that they're the moral army and that they had to slaughter all those people. They just had no choice at all. No, moral, decent people have a choice. It doesn't matter, guys, this isn't about people, it's about governments. Governments do things that are terrible all the time. And right now, Israel, their government, run by right-wing, warmongering madman, is threatening to start wars with almost all of its neighbors now, including Egypt, which they've had a peace deal with that has worked and kept Israel safe for all of these years. But this lunatic is looking to undo all of that and cause what is the United Nations is calling an humanitarian catastrophe.
There's already famine.
Rafah.
There's already famine in the north, okay? Just complete and utter devastation. But I mean, I don't know how far Israel would need to go for people who keep denying the reality to finally accept what's actually happening on the ground there.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.